Welcome to the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show. Here's your host, Brien Hanley.
Hey, everybody, what's going on? This is your man, Big B, Brien Hanley. Welcome back to Big 12 Insiders. Appreciate everybody being in here. Today, we've got Adam Munster-Tiger, who covers the Colorado Buffaloes for 24/7 Sports. So got a lot to talk about as far as the Colorado Buffaloes. So we'll get into that, the ins and outs of what their season could be, all that good stuff today. But before we get started, as always, remember to like, follow, subscribe, and continue to get in the comments section like you guys always do, and hit the notification bell so you know exactly when Big 12 Insiders content comes out. Adam, how are you doing today, my man?
I'm doing great. It's always to come on with you, Big B. How have you been?
I've been all right. It's a little slow period, but that's okay. That's okay. There's still plenty to talk about. So first things first is, as far as, I mean, obviously that just came out, the last day or so. Coach Prime, anything that you know on his condition? How is he doing? I know he said he's doing okay. Is there any new news about Coach Prime and how he's feeling these days?
Yeah, just to fill everybody in on what's been going on there is Coach Prime goes back to what he calls his country ranch down. It's about 60 miles outside of Dallas, and he's taken sabbaticals there before and kind of used that as a recharging spot for him. And even when he's there, he's doing media stuff and he's, talking to folks back in Colorado. And so he went back there for the draft party they held for Shedeur and for Shiloh Sanders. And he came down with an undisclosed illness. They have not explained exactly what's going on. Coach Prime has said that he's going to kind of break it all down when he gets back to Boulder, that he's going to be okay, but did reveal recently, he's only done one interview in the last month and a half, and he revealed that he lost 14 pounds due to this. So certainly not just your average cold that he's been dealing with. I guess it's never ideal to not have your head coach on campus. I guess if there is a time of year that you want your head coach to be able to rest up, this would be it. He's been able to do a lot of stuff over Zoom with recruits. And certainly, Deion Sanders is a different type of head coach, and he's got speaking engagements all throughout the year. He's hopping on private jets. And so this staff is used to things kind of rolling along when he's not there. And it would be tough to overcome this if this happened in August or September during the season. But it's one of those things. It's not ideal. He was not at their youth or high school camps. And I'm sure there are a lot of disappointed youngsters that, didn't get a chance to meet Deion Sanders. But hey, I mean, this is a health issue, and we got to respect his privacy until he comes out and shares what it is. Even if I knew Big B, I don't think I could say.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
It's one of those sensitive deals that, when he's ready, he's going to talk about it. And unfortunately, it does sound like he's on the mend. Yeah.
Which is good, that he's getting better. And that's the most important thing is, hey, you're getting better, your health. I mean, if you're not going to take care of it, nobody else will. So I totally understand. It was just, I don't want to say nerve-wracking, but it just I think it kind of shocked a lot of people because obviously nobody really knew. And it just kind of sent a little shockwave through the media world yesterday and a little bit today. But the good news is he's getting better. So for anybody who didn't know, glad you cleared some of that up, Adam. We appreciate it. Getting on to football, some changes coming to Boulder, obviously, as far as personnel is concerned. The big question, and I'll just start it off, is there a leader right now in the clubhouse to be QB1, to be the new starting quarterback, or is this thing going to last until fall camp?
Yeah, I mean, they're keeping it an open competition, but you just look at the resumes of the quarterbacks that are battling for this position, and you have to default to Caden Salter being the front runner there. He led Liberty to an undefeated regular season 2 years ago and rushed for over 1,000 yards as a dual threat quarterback. And for an offense like Colorado's that's been really struggling to find this balance offensively, ranking dead last in the FBS ranks in rushing offense the last 2 years, having a dual threat quarterback like Caden Salter with his experience in the RPO game, I think could open up a lot of things for this offense. And so you've got to kind of look to him to be the front runner going into this. But Julian Lewis, the 5-star guy that came in as an early enrollee, is definitely not taking a backseat to anybody. He's still 17 years old. And so there's that just things that he's got to continue to grow with things, but he's made strides already. He's begging the coaches to let him in the indoor practice facility after hours to try to get an extra rep. So he's done everything he can to make this a competition, but how do you make up all that experience that
Right.
Kate has, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you can't discount the amount of experience that somebody has playing big time football. Moving on from that, I mean, you mentioned the RPO game. You know, it's something that Colorado did a little bit of that stuff near the goal line last year with Shedeur Sanders, but Shedeur wasn't a running quarterback. I mean, he had mobility, but is the offense going to change a little bit now that the two guys do have some running ability? Is the offense going to change a little bit, or are we still going to see the majority of what we saw with Shedeur Sanders at the helm?
Yeah, you're definitely, especially if Caden Salter is the guy at quarterback, you're going to see a lot of the RPO stuff kind of take over this offense. I think that would be the strength of his. And I still think that you're going to see Pat Sherman, this offense, kind of use the short passing game as an extension of the run game, which sometimes kind of makes the stats look a little misleading, you know, in terms of, I mentioned earlier that they were dead last in the FBS ranks and running offense the last couple of seasons. Well, you know, a lot of that was dump offs to Jimmy Horn and Travis Hunter and you know, LeJontay Wester, guys that were able to make big plays out of those short passes, and it didn't show up in the rushing stats. So I still expect to see some of that, a lot of that short passing game. Probably still more 10 personnel. You know, the depth at tight end is an issue for them right now. So as much as they like to be a little bit more versatile than they've been, I think where you're going to see that versatility come through is having a dual threat quarterback that is going to actually be a threat. Like you mentioned there, like Shedeur Sanders was already taking enough hits. He was not going to take more hits
Right.
in the ground game than he had to, for sure.
Absolutely. So, I mean, talking about hits, let's move on to the offensive line. You know, 2 years ago, let's just be honest, the offensive line was dreadful. Last year, it got a little bit better. I mean, it wasn't great. It was, I mean, I wouldn't even say that it was good or anything close to that, but it did show improvement. Coming off the spring, what does that offensive line look like? And are they going to try to establish more of a ground game this season with if the offensive line is improved?
Yeah, they've made another huge push through the transfer portal with offense linemen. And I think one of the more encouraging signs for Colorado fans this spring was that some of the returning guys on the O line were getting beat out by these guys that they brought in through the portal. And that's obviously coming off last season. Like you said, they were a little bit better than they were in 2023, but still a group that definitely needed to get better, especially when you kind of break in a new quarterback and some younger players at the skill position. So that was encouraging to see. And Jordan Seaton at left tackle has continued to take that next step that, you know, when a young man rolls onto campus with a Maybach, you're like, can he handle this, you know?
Right.
And I've been really impressed with Jordan Seaton. Just he comes back after May break, and you've got some guys that are, you know, finding the nearest trash can. And Jordan Seaton is saying, "Come on, let's run more. Let's do more." And his leadership has really taken off. And this is just a true sophomore and somebody that I think is going to be, you know, a candidate to be an All-American at left tackle. You know, what's the ceiling of the rest of that group? I'd say it's the floor is higher than it was last year. The
Sure.
floor last year was higher than it was Coach Prime's first year in Boulder. And the ceiling is kind of hard to tell. You've got some guys like Zy Chrysler that come in that, you know, was an honorable mention all conference guy at Illinois. Xavier Hill was Memphis's top graded player on PFF last year. So you've got some of these pieces that have come in that people are really excited about, but until you obviously see that group come together and mesh, it's hard to say, especially what we've seen the last 2 years, that's going to be, you know, top half of the Big 12 type unit on the O-line.
Gotcha. Yeah. Improvement, like I said, you can change it overnight. I mean, I know a lot of people don't like the transfer portal. But Colorado's not one of those places, and they've embraced it, have built their roster. That to me, I like it. I like that approach. Is like, look, these are the rules. If you're going to allow me to use these rules, my job is to win games. That's why I admire what Coach Prime is doing, because it's a different approach. A lot of people didn't like it, but he said, no, this is what we're doing. This is the rules. And I love it. I love that aspect of it, of trying to do things differently and be successful. And obviously it worked to a large extent last year. Travis Hunter has moved on from Colorado. Obviously there's two sides of the balls where you're having to fill a Heisman Trophy winner. To me, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he'll be more missed on the offensive side for just the playmaker standpoint. First off, is that true? Second of all, is what is the plan? Is it going to be more, hey, by committee that we're going to try to replace this production, or is there somebody that's standing out now that maybe not has the same production, but is there more of a lead dog in the wide receiver room?
Yeah, great question. And I'm going to go back to the last point you made there before this question about the fact that Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, was kind of at the cutting edge with his transfer portal stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't have a choice.
Right.
I covered that 2022 Colorado football team. That was tough. That was real tough. And I think that he would prefer, honestly, to have a little bit more of that development aspect, but he's not a patient person. So
right.
You're not going to have him on a 3-4 year plan trying to win football games. So that's kind of why he was a trendsetter in that area. In terms of receiver, I agree with you. In a lot of people that I did interviews with nationally, as Travis Hunter was on these different NFL franchises, draft boards would have me come on their radio station and ask me what side of the ball. And just, he's such a difference maker on offense with and he's incredible defensively, but you're right. I mean, a lot of guys are good at 50-50 balls, but when you throw it deep to Travis Hunter, it's like 85-15.
Right.
That's what it turns into with him, because it's unbelievable. He made a catch during OTAs the other day that just unbelievable. And so he went to a great place in the Jaguars where they want to really utilize his dual threat capabilities. I do agree with a lot of people that you can't necessarily play him 100% of the reps both ways at the next level. But the fact that they're willing to kind of give him that opportunity should be fun to watch play out. In terms of what replaces him, it's by committee. There's 10 scholarship receivers, and there's not a whole lot separating a lot of these guys. Draylen Miller would be the first guy you'd mention. Shedeur Sanders actually cut his spring break short because they were getting ready for pro timing day in Boulder, and he wanted Draylen Miller just back there as a running back, even though he's a receiver at Colorado, just because he had built that much chemistry with him during Draylen Miller's freshman year. So he was the only non-senior out there or non-NFL guy at that event. And he looks the part, and he's going to be all over the offense for them. You don't replace Travis Hunter with one or two guys from just a pure playmaking standpoint, but skill recruiting has gone really well since Coach Prime got to Boulder, and I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. No. But it's even crazy. As good as their cornerback recruiting is, their receiver recruiting has probably been even better. So there's some guys like Amari Miller, who had a big game against Kansas State last year before he got hurt in that game, is going to be looked upon to step up as well. We're doing all our depth chart predictions right now, and it's like, just flip a coin with some of these receivers. It's going to be a really deep group. Last year, they went 10 personnel. It was like the same 4 receivers out there most of the time. Right. This year, it's going to be a lot of rotating at that position.
Which is good, I think, if you don't have, in this, I guess the misconception is if you don't have a lead dog, well, then nobody's any good. That doesn't necessarily mean that, Adam. It just means, hey, maybe there's somebody they haven't separated and everybody is talented, but there's not just this elite guy out there. And I think that can be a good thing because, again, it unpredictability, just for that purpose alone. The defense last year, switching sides of the ball, took a step forward. The year before, it was, teams got after them a little bit. They got physical with Colorado. That changed last year, Adam, for the most part. And I noticed it basically the second half of the Nebraska game. First half of the Kansas State game wasn't great, but the second half was okay. They made some adjustments and they kind of slowed them down a little bit. And then the rest of the year, for the most part, they were pretty good. The Kansas game got away, and the BYU in the bowl game, they got away from them. But other than that, they were pretty good. What's the defense going to look like? Where's the strength going to be again this year?
Well, I think the glass half full approach on the way to answer that question to be that their defensive line is the best that it's been since I think I've covered Colorado. It's going back to 2003, especially from a depth standpoint. You've got so many guys that you can roll through there. Now, you go back to last year, and the pessimistic view would be that you lose Vonta Bentley and Nikai Hill-Green, who at linebacker played fantastic football last year, and we're a big reason why they made that big jump from year one under Coach Prime to year two under Coach Prime. And that's a little bit of a question mark. Linebacker's a pretty thin position. They did bring in a couple transfers they're excited about, guys that began their career at the Power 4 level, went down a level, and then are now back up after producing at some Group of 5 schools. And so you would have liked to get an elite linebacker to really just feel great about that group. And on the back end, Cameron Simon-Craig was the heartbeat of the defense last year, and he's off to the NFL now. So there's a leadership void that there's certain guys that are trying to pick up there. Robert Livingston comes back as a defense coordinator. He's probably the most respected coach outside of Deion Sanders in this program. The New Orleans Saints had him as a finalist for their DC position this past offseason. And he's one of those guys that doesn't overcomplicate things. That was a big issue year one under Coach Prime when Charles Kelly was the DC. They were just their heads were swimming and they were having a hard time getting down the concepts. And so last year's scheme was simplified to the fact, and you could see that. I mean, guys were out there, aside from those instances where things kind of snowballed against them, this was generally a defense that played with a lot of heart last year. And so I think that's going to carry over. Depth at linebacker, some questions on the back end of that secondary are maybe the biggest question marks with this defense going into this coming season.
Yeah, that, like I said, that was one of the things that you could really notice from year one to year two was kind of the physicality of the defense. It was totally different, which is a good thing, and it needed to be different. Let's just face it, Colorado, wasn't great the year before, but they got better, and I think that's part of this maturation process, Adam, with the Colorado program is that, it's Coach Prime and everybody believes that they should just be, if they're not the best team going undefeated, that the program's not making strides. That's not true at all. And in my eyes, they could have won 6 games last year and they would have been making strides from what they were year one to year two. And they ended up winning 9. You take a look and fast forward to this season, you start looking at that schedule, Adam, it's a little difficult. It doesn't start off easy. Georgia Tech is a decent football team, better than decent. They're a good football team. And then you go through the Big 12 slate. It's not an easy – now, no game really in the Big 12 is easy these days because you don't know who's going to be good. Everybody, could be good. And, I just look at their schedule and I'm like, I don't know, man. It seems to be difficult. I don't know if it's too early for predictions and stuff like that, but you take a look at Colorado's schedule. I think they get anywhere between 6 and 8 wins. I think it's a success, Adam. Again, and that's taking a step back from last year when they won 9. You just start looking at things, maybe not 6 wins, but you get 7, 8 wins at that schedule. I think that's a win for Colorado.
I think most of the outside perspective would view that as a success. It's kind of crazy just how sometimes these outside perspectives are formed. And like you said, you started out there by like people kind of forget how bad Colorado was before Coach Prime got to Boulder. And now because Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders are in the NFL, think they're going to stink, right. And it's kind of like the truth. A lot of it's in the middle usually, and they're going to look a lot different. This is not going to be the Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders show. It's going to be if they're going to be successful, a more balanced attack offensively, defensively in the trenches that they've upgraded substantially. In terms of the schedule, Yeah, I mean, out the gates with Georgia Tech, that's tough. That's a program that's feeling pretty good about themselves coming off last year. Then Colorado's going to be an underdog in that game, which I think is good for their mindset going into that
Mhm.
football game, especially with it being a home game. But you get your non-conference games in Boulder. Your first games, your first road games at Houston. You know, a lot of coin flip games in there,
Mhm.
and you look at Colorado, and on 24/7 Sports, we have that overall recruiting class ranking that ties in together both the prep recruiting and the transfers. They've been 1 and 2 in the conference in those ratings every year since Deion Sanders took over in Boulder. So the teams you're competing against, you should have as much or more talent if you believe in our talent evaluators, right? Nationally. So those should be games you should be competing in. And so
Right.
I can't wait to see how it plays out. Again, it's going to be just such a different season. Colorado will not have a Heisman Trophy winner this
Right.
year, but it's going to be a team that I think is going to surprise some people. But also, if the coaching under Pat Shermer offensively does not take a step forward to be able to implement this balanced attack offensively, I don't think they're going to live up to their own expectations. I think that's going to be a key for them. You can't keep talking about how you're going to be more balanced. We're going to run the ball and you don't do it. You've got to
Right.
come out there and be more balanced. And so the proof will be in the pudding when they kick off the season. But there's no unwinnable game on that schedule.
Nope.
I guess is the main point that I have.
Yeah, and that's the truth. There's no unwinnable game. It's like I mentioned, the Big 12, you just don't know. I mean, heck, you look at last year, the teams that were predicted to be first were last. I mean, it's just crazy. The conference is just wild like that. It's going to be another topsy-turvy year this year in the Big 12. And I think Colorado will be right in the middle of all that. Adam, I want to thank you again, man, for your time today. I know you didn't have to do that, so we absolutely appreciate you being a friend of the show. Tell everybody where they can find you and the things that you are doing.
BuffStampede.com and on 24/7 Sports. I'm on X at AdamCM777. Thanks, Big B. Appreciate
Yeah,
you.
thank you. Appreciate everybody for being here. Thank you guys again, as always. We will be back next week. Appreciate it. You guys have a good day.
Thank you for watching the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show. This has been a Spirit Street production.